Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article of discussion is about World Hearing Day. This is held on March 3rd every year to raise awareness on how to prevent deafness and also promote hearing care across the world. When we look into the statistics, as per the World Health Organization estimate, there were 466 million persons in the world with hearing loss in the year 2018, and the figure is likely to increase to 630 million by the year 2030. So the point of concern is, what are the reasons for hearing loss? The first key major issue is the ear infection. This is followed by secretion of wax within the ears, and this, when not clean, can also result in hearing loss. This is followed by injury within the ears, and when there is a particular person who is administered ototoxic drugs, and if this is not given by the doctors, then a person can also have the hearing loss. And if there are people who are working in industries and they're surrounded by loud voice, such people can also be impacted, and this can also result in hearing loss as well. And there are certain health issues, let's say people who are suffering from rubella, these are the people who can also be having hearing loss as well. So in order to overcome these issues, what we have is the World Health Organization coming up with an app which is called as the Hear Who. So what is this Hear Who app all about? This application basically raises awareness about the importance of hearing. It will encourage people to check their hearing regularly and also practice safe listening. Allow health workers to check the hearing status of people in their communities as well. So because there are people who are already suffering from hear losses, and there would be people in the future who would be suffering from hear losses, in order to make sure that these people do not suffer from such issues in the future, the World Health Organization has come up with such a move. So this is what we need to understand in reference to this article. So let's look into the next article. This article is important from your GS paper 1 perspective, and that is to do with the cultural aspect. What are we speaking about? We are speaking about the Hampi Utsav. This Hampi Utsav is also known as the Vijaya Utsava, and this is celebrated in the state of Karnataka. This festival is all about dance, music, drama, puppet shows, vibrant processions, and also fireworks. What is this festival all about? So Hampi, as we all know, has cultural importance with erstwhile Vijayanagara Empire. So all the traditions, the cultural values, the beautiful celebrations that was once celebrated in the Vijayanagara Empire, when it is practiced in the current form, and that becomes what is called as the Hampi Utsav, or what is also called as the Vijaya Utsava. So this is what we need to understand in reference to this article. Moving on, let's look into the next article. This article says rule on reuse of cooking oil kicks in today. So what is the context? The Food Safety and Standards Authority of India has issued a directive wherein all food business operators or hotels which use edible cooking oil for preparing their food items at their hotels will not be able to use oil more than 3 times in a day if their consumption in edible oil is more than 50 liters a day. So what is the objective of this particular directive? We all know for the fact, when there is repeated use of a particular oil, the same oil for frying of food, this leads to certain changes in the physiochemical, nutritional, as well as the sensory properties of the edible oil. In view of this particular idea, it is important to monitor the quality of the oil and also to avoid use of degraded oil for the cooking purposes, in order to make sure that the oil that the hotels as well as the other food business operations do not continue with the degraded oil. That is why the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India has come up with this particular directive. So what will happen henceforth is, all food business operatives will have to have a particular database. So this particular database will have to maintain certain records. This records will basically involve what is the amount of oil that a particular company or an organization or a hotel is buying for that particular day. So for a particular day, what is the amount that it is buying? what is the name of the oil that it is using, what is the quantity of oil that is using for the frying, and what is the quantity of this oil that has been discarded, and the date, the mode of disposal, all needs to be maintained in the record, and it has to be pasted in a database. And once this is done, what it also has to do is it has to follow all those regulations that have been set by the Food Safety Standard Authority of India with respect to the states as well as the union territories. Another important point that we also have to consider is it has also come up with the regulation about the total polar compounds. The Food Safety and Standard Authority of India has also come up with a regulation where it has prescribed the limit for this total polar compounds, and this has set a limit of maximum of about 25%. So if the oil has total polar compounds anything more than 25%, such oil will have to be discarded and it cannot be used any further. Why is this brought into picture? Let's understand this in greater detail. Let's say, for example, as oil is heated to a particular smoking point, what happens is the total polar compound starts increasing. And when there is increase in the total polar compounds, what we will see is the increase in the trans fatty acids. Any increase in the trans fatty acid, we all know for the fact, will be an issue with respect to the health. So more the total polar compounds, the more will be the trans fatty acids. The more the trans fatty acids, we all know that it is going to be hazardous for the health. Apart from this, what we will also see is the higher level of TPC in the cooking oil leads to other health issues. Let's take for example the hypertension, let's say atherosclerosis, Alzheimer's disease, and also liver disease as well. So because there are certain health issues that are developed with increase in the total polar compounds, what the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India has done is it has regulated and it has said that total polar components for the cooking oil cannot exceed 25%, and in case it is exceeding 25%, this cooking oil will also have to be discarded as well. Next important point is what is the significance of this particular move. So what happens is because the government has come up with this particular move, this would be a step towards improving the health conditions. So all those harmful effects because of this particular unregulation is now curbed, and what we will have is the health conditions of the people in the country is under the watchful eyes of the Food Security Authority of India. Currently, when we look into the cooking oil regulation, this can be discarded, and majority of the hotels or for example the food business operators chuck it in the drain. So they discard or dispose this oil in a very haphazard manner. They do not have any regulation as such. So what the food safety security has also done is, apart from setting quality standards for the oil, it has come up with a new regulation where it has addressed the way in which the oil also has to be discarded. So any further, all these hotels or other organizations will not be able to discard or dispose in an unstructured manner, but they also need to have a mechanism as to how they'll be discarding the used oil. Apart from this, the cooking oil can also be used for the biodiesel production. So the Food Safety and Standard Authority of India is also planning to redirect the used cooking oil from the food business operators to the biodiesel production. Now that we have discussed the significant aspect of this move, there are also certain concerns that have been voiced in this article. Karnataka is the first state to have a bioenergy developmental board, and what they also do is they also collect this reused cooking oil from big chains of restaurants by biodiesel manufacturing units. But this collection that we have seen from Karnataka has also faced certain concerns. So what are the concerns? The main issue with this collection is the registration units. So you have the number of hotels, and these hotels will first have to be registered with the government. But this is the major problem. Majority of the hotels are not registering themselves with the government, so the collection points will be a major problem for the government. Only when a particular hotel is able to register itself with the government will there be a certain collection points, or there will be certain executive units which will be able to go up to that hotel and pick up the used oil. But with failure of registration, what we will see is they'll not be able to collect the used oil. The next key concern this article goes on to speak about is the empanelment of aggregators. So now that we have realized there is registration failure that is happening because the hotels and other organizations are not registering themselves with the government. But the government is also facing problems with respect to who will be collecting this particular oil. So there is a hotel, the hotel has used the oil, and who will be picking up this oil from that particular hotel is another point of discussion. So you have number of people who would want to collect this particular oil for the biodiesel reproduction, but the problem is who is going to do it is the major problem. So this has not been structured is another point of concern. So how do we overcome all these concerns is the point of discussion. So what we need is a triple E strategy. So what does this triple E strategy stands for? The first E stands with the education. So educating both the consumers as well as the food businesses about certain public health consequences of this spoiled used cooking oil. So the first key argument is educate the people, tell the hotels about the consequences of this spoiled used cooking oil, so that these are the people who will stop using this spoiled cooking oil. The next E that it also speaks about is in reference to the enforcement. So now that the government has come up with a particular regulation, what is of importance to us is to make sure that all these laws are implemented. The target for this particular directive should be started off with large food processing units, restaurants, as well as fast food joints that have been producing food at large quantities. So first make sure that you choose those large quantity production hotels. This can also be carried forward with the minor ones as well. So the first important point with respect to this particular strategy is we need to educate them, and then next is the enforcement, that is find out who the large production units are, and then after you have found out these large production units, then continue with the smaller hotels. And the third important point that we have to understand in the strategy is about the ecosystem. We did realize that this cooking oil can also be used for the biodiesel production. So this particular article further goes on to expand that the collection of used cooking oil and producing biodiesel from it, for which an ecosystem is required. So what the government will also have to make sure is establish this ecosystem so that a continuous amount of diversification happens from the used oil to these units to produce biodiesel. So this is what we need to understand in reference to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. This article says Kanyasri stipends are no shield against trafficking. So what is this Kanyasri scheme all about? It is a conditional transfer scheme with the aim of improving the status and well-being of the girl child in the state of West Bengal. So kindly remember that this Kanyasri scheme is a program of the West Bengal government, and this incentivizes the schooling of all teenage girls and delaying their marriage until the age of 18, which is the legal age of marriage. So this scheme of West Bengal basically makes sure that there is no child marriage that is entertained in the region of West Bengal. So this particular scheme of the West Bengal government has also been given international recognition by the United Kingdom's Department of International Development as well as the UNICEF. But what this article currently goes on to speak about, it says that this particular program of the scheme of the West Bengal has not been able to control, or it cannot put an end to trafficking as well. And the next important scheme that this article further goes on to speak about is also called as the Swayan Siddha scheme, which is also another scheme by the West Bengal government, basically done to prevent trafficking. So this is what we need to understand in reference to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. This article says UNSC blacklists Osama's son. Hamza bin Laden is 30-year old and he is the son of Al Qaeda chief Osama bin Laden. So United Nations Security Council has described Hamza as the most probable successor after Al Qaeda's present leader, that is Ayman al-Zawahiri. Apart from this, the United States of America has also announced a reward of up to 1 million for information about him. So let's understand what is the background of Hamza here. The United States of America has one of the important institutions called as the Brookings Institution. This Brookings Institution claims that Hamza was with his father, that is Osama bin Laden, in Afghanistan prior to 9/11 attacks. The institution further goes on to say that Hamza also spent time with his father in Pakistan after the NATO invasion of Afghanistan after the September 11 attacks. In 2015, Al Qaeda's current leader Ayman al Zawahiri has also introduced that Hamza will be the future leader of Al Qaeda. Hamza is also seen as that fresh face with a younger voice who would be able to attract and inspire the youth to join the militancy. So, because all this has been happening in the background, the United Nations Security Council has blacklisted Osama bin Laden's son. So, what would be the implications of blacklisting? The blacklisting of Hamza here would basically mean that he'll be subjected to travel ban, assets freeze, as well as the arms embargo. So what does the travel ban basically mean? So this travel ban against Hamza implies that his entry or the transit in any of the countries that are UN members will not be allowed in accordance with the travel sanctions. So he'll not be able to enter a particular country, he'll not be able to pass through that particular country, and any country which has been a part of United Nations should not be entering this particular person. Next important point is the assets of this particular person will be frozen. So what this means is that all his assets, whether it is the targeted individual or that particular entity, will be frozen. The funds, the financial assets, and all economic resources that come under the direct or indirect ownership of Hamza will be completely frozen. Let's say, for example, there is an organization through which he is able to derive some money. This organization will also be blocked. He'll not be able to take out money from any banking system. He'll not be able to use any type of money that he is deriving currently. So all his assets, the money that he is deriving from, will be completely frozen. Apart from this, there is also what is called as the arms embargo. So what this means is that Hamza will be prevented from acquiring arms as well as ammunitions. All member countries of the United Nations will further be directed to block those channels that might directly or indirectly facilitate the sale of arms to the Al Qaeda leader. So no country will be able to transfer arms to him, and in case they have any relevant information that there is a particular country which is transferring arms, this can also be notified to the United Nations Security Council as well. Apart from this, there is also what is called as the non-material support. Let's say, for example, the technical advice or the logistic support or training with respect to the military activities. All this will further have to be stopped in case any country is actually planning to advance this particular move. So what this holistically means is that he'll not be able to conduct any of the activities because of the travel ban, because of the assets freeze, as well as the arms embargo. So this is what we need to understand in reference to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. This article is important from your GS paper 1, and that is to do with culture. And what are we speaking about? We are speaking about the Tolpava Kooth. This can be an important point from your prelims examination. So this Tolpava Kooth is a unique shadow puppet theatre form of the Kerala. It is preserved as a family tradition by the Pullavas. It is an ancient peculiar ritualistic art form dedicated to Bhagavati, worshipped by the people of Kerala as Mother Goddess. As a ritualistic art form, Tolpava Kooth is performed during the months of January to May at the especially constructed theatre called as Kootu Madam in front of Bhagavati temple. It is believed to have originated in the 9th century AD and uses Kamba Ramayana as its basic text. This is very important prelims factual data, so kindly remember all these facts. This can be a prospective question in your prelims examination. So moving on, let's look into the next article. This article basically speaks about the Firoz Minar. This is again important from architecture in your cultural perspective. This is located in Gaur Road in West Bengal. It was built by Saifuddin Firoz Shah, the second ruler of Bengal's Habshi dynasty. The structure is a 5-story tower which resembles that of the Qutub Minar. It features a spiraling flight consisting of 84 steps. By ascending, one can reach the top of the tower. It is locally known as Pir Asa Mandir and Chirag Chirag Dani. Since Asa means staff, it could refer to local saint, since Chirag Dani means where the lamps are lit. So these are some of the factual data which we will have to remember. There is not much of analysis for the same. Another important point is we will also have to discuss about the Gaur as well. Lakshmanavati as Lakhnauti was originally ruled by Palas and then the Senas. King Lakshman Sena laid the Gaur's foundation, which happens to be one of the important places during that time, and it was also made as the capital in 1179. Sultan Iltutmish's general Bakhtiyar Khilji defeated him in 1202. After Delhi Sultans, various rulers from Ilyas Shahi House of Raja Ganesh, Hapsai dynasty and Hussein Shaini dynasty ruled from 1338 onwards till Sheshar Suri sacked it in 1539. So these are some of the facts that have been discussed in the article. That is why this becomes a prospective question in your prelims examination. So moving on, let's look into some of the prelims practice questions. Which of the following are correctly matched? The Sahastra Seema Bal is along the China border, the BSF along the Myanmar, the CRPF looks into the riots and Naxal hit region, the CIF safeguards the PSU industries and public installations. Which of them are correctly matched? And the answer for this is 3 and 4 only. Why? Let's look into the explanation for the same. So this is the explanation, and why is this important? It speaks about the CRPF, it speaks about the border security force, and that is the reason we have picked up this particular question. Moving on, let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are the programs from the SpaceX? New Shepard system, Moon Express, as well as the Zuma mission? And the answer for this is 3 only. Why? Let's look into the explanation for the same. The New Shepard is a vertical takeoff, vertical landing, suborbital crewed rocket that is being developed by Blue Origin. And Bezos founded Blue Origin in 2000 to develop private human access to space travel. So this is not a program of SpaceX. And you also have a Moon Express, which is an American privately held early stage company which was formed by a group of Silicon Valley and space entrepreneurs. That is why Moon Express is also not part of SpaceX program. Moving on, let's look into the next prelims practice question. Consider the following statements with respect to the ease reforms index. It is published by RBI. SBI topped the list of best performing public sector banks in the country. Which of the above statements are correct? None. Why? Because let's look into the explanation. This has been jointly prepared by the Indian Banking Association and the Boston Consulting Group, and Punjab National Bank has topped the list of best performing public sector banks, and it is not the SBI. So this is the explanation for that particular question. Moving on, let's look into the next prelims practice question. Kallapani is a dispute between India and Nepal. Let's look into the map for the same. So this Kallapani is occupied in this particular region, and this is a dispute between India as well as Nepal. It is a territory disputed between India and Nepal. It is administered as part of Pithoragarh district in Uttarakhand state. It is situated on Kailash Mansarovar route at an altitude of 3600 meters. It is also said that great sage Vyasa meditated at this place, giving the region its name also as Vyas Valley. Nepal has been claiming its rights over Kallapani and calling it as a part of Dracula district. So this is what we need to understand. Moving on, let's look into the previous year practice question. The multi-dimensional poverty index developed by Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative with UNDP support covers which of the following? The answer for this is 1 only. Let's look into the explanation for the same. So it says the MPI looks beyond the income to understand how people experience poverty in multiple and simultaneous ways, and it has 3 key dimensions, that is health, education and standard of living. This further comprises 10 indicators. So kindly look into the explanation for the same. So moving on, let's look into the mains practice question. It says discuss about the various types of puppetry and also explain the cultural significance. This is a straightforward question, so please write all your answers on the comment section so that we can have a peer review and the Byju's team can also evaluate as well. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.